The Harrington estate stood proudly on the edge of a quiet suburb just outside Boston. From the street, it looked like the picture of the American dream. Large white pillars, manicured lawns, and tall oak trees framing the property like guardians. Neighbors admired it, visitors envied it, and the Harrington name carried weight in the city. But inside those walls, secrets festered. The kind of secrets that could destroy a family from the inside out. Richard Harrington, the patriarch, was a self-made millionaire. He owned chains of real estate developments and prided himself on being disciplined, hardworking, and fair. In the media, he was the model of a generous businessman. At home, however, Richard was emotionally absent, too consumed by work and public image to notice the cracks forming in his own household. His first wife, Elizabeth, had died a decade earlier. She was warm, elegant, and deeply loved, not only by her children but also by the community. She left behind 2 kids. Sophia, who was 16 when her mother passed away, and Ethan, who had been just 10 years old. Their world had shattered with Elizabeth's death. And though Richard remarried quickly, the children never truly healed. Richard's second wife, Vanessa, was everything Elizabeth wasn't. Outwardly charming and socially skilled, she won over Richard with her beauty and ambition. But beneath her polished exterior was a cold, calculating heart. Vanessa wanted control of the house, of the children, and most importantly, of Richard's fortune. At first, she played the role of the kind stepmother. But as time passed, the mask slipped. When Richard wasn't around, she revealed her true nature. Her priority was her own son, Brandon, born soon after her marriage to Richard. Brandon grew up spoiled, entitled, and arrogant, his mother's golden boy. Meanwhile, Sophia and Ethan became outsiders in their own home. Vanessa was ruthless in her comparisons. "Why can't you be more like Brandon?" she would sneer at Ethan, belittling him over the smallest mistakes. Sophia, who had stepped into the role of protector, took the brunt of Vanessa's cruelty in silence, swallowing her pride and learning patience as her shield. By the time Sophia was 22, she had grown into a quiet but strong young woman. Ethan, now 16, was smart but wounded, his confidence chipped away by years of ridicule. Brandon, on the other hand, strutted around the estate like he owned it, his mother feeding his ego at every turn. It was during one of their family dinners that Sophia began to realize patience alone would no longer be enough. The Harringtons sat around their long mahogany dining table beneath a glowing chandelier. Richard sat at the head, half listening as he scrolled through emails on his iPad. Vanessa, dressed immaculately in designer clothes, watched Brandon with pride as he boasted about his new leadership role at his university. "I've been elected president of the student council," Brandon announced, leaning back in his chair with a smug smile. "That's my boy," Vanessa said, clapping lightly. "He was born to lead." Her gaze shifted toward Ethan, who sat quietly at the other end of the table, pushing his mashed potatoes around with his fork. Unlike some people who can't even pass their sophomore year without tutoring. Ethan's face flushed with shame. Sophia immediately reached for his hand under the table, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "Vanessa," Richard muttered without looking up from his iPad, "let's not compare the kids." But his words were empty, mechanical, just something he said to avoid conflict. He never pressed further, never defended his children. And that silence stung more than Vanessa's cruelty. That night, Sophia found Ethan sitting alone in the backyard, the chilly New England air ruffling his hair as he stared blankly at the stars. "She hates us," he said, his voice cracking. "What did we ever do to her?" Sophia's chest tightened. She pulled her younger brother close, wrapping her arms around him. "We remind her of something she can't ever replace," she whispered. "Our mom. And deep down, she knows she'll never live up to Elizabeth Harrington." Sophia didn't cry that night. Instead, she made herself a silent vow. One day Vanessa and Brandon would taste the pain they had inflicted on Ethan and her. One day justice would come. The seeds of revenge don't sprout overnight. They grow slowly, watered by humiliation, cruelty, and silence. For years Sophia kept her anger buried, her smile polite, her voice calm. But inside the storm was building. And then it happened, the discovery that changed everything. One morning, while helping the housekeeper clear out the attic, Sophia stumbled upon a dusty old box filled with her late mother's belongings. Inside, tucked beneath faded scarves and photo albums, was a bundle of handwritten letters tied with a ribbon. With trembling hands, Sophia opened them. They were Elizabeth's letters, written in the final year of her life. In them, her mother expressed fear. Fear of someone close to her. Someone who wanted her gone. If anything happens to me, promise me you'll protect the children. I don't believe it would be an accident. There are forces here I cannot trust. Sophia froze, her breath caught in her throat. For years, she had accepted her mother's sudden death as fate. But now the letters suggested something darker. She started asking questions quietly, carefully. Some of the older staff who had worked in the house during her mother's time whispered things they'd never said aloud. Strange arguments between Elizabeth and Vanessa back when Vanessa was just a family friend. Elizabeth falling ill mysteriously before her death. Rumors of betrayal and poison. Sophia's heart hardened. Her stepmother wasn't just cruel. She might have been the very reason her mother was dead. From that moment, Sophia's vow of revenge deepened. It wasn't just about Ethan anymore. It wasn't just about surviving Vanessa's cruelty. It was about uncovering the truth. About her mother. About the Harrington legacy. And making Vanessa Harrington pay. Sophia Harrington was no longer the naive girl who once believed patience would solve everything. With her mother's letters locked away safely in her room, she began looking at her stepmother through a different lens. Every smile Vanessa gave her father seemed sinister now. Every affectionate pat on Brandon's shoulder laced with arrogance. Every insult toward Ethan another brick in a wall Sophia was determined to tear down. But revenge required patience. And patience required silence. Sophia knew if she confronted Vanessa directly, it would backfire. Her father was blind to his wife's cruelty, and Brandon would twist any story to paint himself the victim. No, Sophia needed proof. She needed to peel away Vanessa's perfect mask, piece by piece. House life inside the Harrington estate. The Harrington mansion was grand, but cold. The kind of house where every surface gleamed but warmth was rare. Vanessa managed the household like a CEO, demanding, controlling, always ensuring appearances were perfect for guests. Ethan had started skipping family dinners, preferring to eat in his room. Vanessa called him ungrateful. Richard ignored the tension, burying himself deeper in his work. Brandon, meanwhile, thrived under the attention, throwing parties in the house when his father was away and dragging the family's name through gossip columns. One Friday evening, Brandon hosted yet another gathering of his wealthy college friends. Loud music echoed through the halls, laughter spilling into the night. Sophia passed through the living room, noticing Brandon downing shots, his arm draped around a girl he barely knew. Vanessa appeared at his side, beaming proudly. "That's my son," she bragged to one of the guests. "Harvard material. A born leader." Sophia clenched her jaw. Ethan sat at the staircase watching quietly, his face clouded with disappointment. Sophia joined him. "Why do you even stay out here?" she whispered. "You could just ignore them." "Because if I hide, they win," Ethan muttered. "And I'm tired of always losing in this house." His words struck her. Ethan's pain wasn't silent anymore. It was growing sharper, turning into anger. And anger could be dangerous if left unshaped. Sophia realized she had to protect him from himself. But she also knew his anger could become an ally in her plan. Love letter. The first clue. One night, Sophia visited the attic again to reread her mother's letters. As she sifted through them, she noticed something she had missed before. An envelope sealed but never opened. On the front, in her mother's elegant handwriting, was written, "For Richard. Only if I cannot tell you myself." Her heart raced. Should she open it? It wasn't hers. But what if it held the truth about Elizabeth's death? Hands trembling, she broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Richard, if you are reading this, I may not be alive to tell you the truth. I have discovered something about Vanessa. She is not who she pretends to be. I fear she wants more than your love. She wants everything. Please, for Sophia and Ethan's sake, be careful whom you trust." Sophia's breath caught. Her mother had suspected Vanessa even back then. Yet Richard had ignored every sign, blind in his affection. Now Sophia had a weapon, a piece of evidence her father could not easily dismiss. But she knew one letter wasn't enough. Vanessa was clever. She could manipulate Richard into believing it was just Elizabeth's paranoia. Sophia needed more. She needed proof of action, not just suspicion. High-voltage conflict sparks. The next confrontation came sooner than expected. One morning, Ethan came downstairs wearing an old leather jacket that had once belonged to their late mother. It was worn, but to him, it was a piece of Elizabeth he could still carry. Vanessa spotted him at the breakfast table. "What on earth are you wearing?" she sneered. "It's Mom's," Ethan said firmly, lifting his chin. "I'm keeping it." Vanessa's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Your mother is gone. That jacket is a relic of the past. Take it off." Ethan's fists clenched on the table. No, the room froze. Brandon smirked from across the table, waiting for the explosion. "Excuse me." Vanessa's voice turned sharp. "Don't test me, boy." Sophia quickly intervened. "Vanessa, it's just a jacket. Stay out of this." Vanessa snapped, slamming her hand against the table. "I won't have this house turned into a museum for ghosts." Ethan stood, his eyes blazing. "She was more of a mother than you'll ever be." Gasps filled the room. Even Brandon's grin faltered. Vanessa's face twisted with rage. "Get out," she hissed. "Both of you. Out of my sight." Sophia pulled Ethan away before things escalated further, but inside her blood boiled. This wasn't just cruelty anymore. Vanessa was erasing their mother's memory piece by piece, and that was unforgivable. Puzzle piece allies in the shadows. Over the next few weeks, Sophia quietly began forming alliances. First was Clara, the longtime housekeeper, who had worked for the Harringtons since before Sophia was born. Clara had been loyal to Elizabeth, and her eyes often welled with tears when she spoke of her. With gentle persuasion, Sophia got Clara to admit that Elizabeth's sudden illness before her death had been unusual. Vanessa had often been the one preparing Elizabeth's tea during those weeks. Then there was Mark, Richard's old business partner, who had been distanced after Vanessa entered the picture. Over coffee, Mark hinted to Sophia that Vanessa had always had an uncanny interest in Richard's finances, more than any wife normally would. Piece by piece, Sophia gathered the puzzle. But she knew she needed something undeniable. Something that could shatter Vanessa's perfect facade in front of her father and the world. Tornado. The boiling point. The breaking point came during Richard's 55th birthday party. A grand affair hosted in their mansion. Politicians, business leaders, and socialites filled the house, all praising Vanessa's grace as the perfect hostess. Sophia watched as Vanessa clung to Richard's arm, smiling sweetly at guests, while Brandon played the charming young heir. Ethan, feeling invisible, tried to slip away upstairs, but Vanessa caught him. "Where are you going? Don't embarrass us in front of our guests." "I don't belong here," Ethan muttered. "That's the first smart thing you've said," she whispered coldly. Sophia heard it. Her anger flared, but she forced herself to stay calm. She needed the right moment. That night, as the party raged on, Sophia caught Vanessa in Richard's study, rifling through his locked drawers. "What are you doing here?" Sophia asked sharply. Vanessa's head snapped up, her expression hardening before she masked it with a smile. "Looking for a pen," she lied smoothly. Sophia crossed her arms. "You're not as careful as you think." For the first time, Vanessa's eyes narrowed, a flicker of unease crossing her face. Sophia held her gaze, her voice low and steady. "I know what you did to my mother." Silence fell like a blade between them. Vanessa's lips twitched into a cold smile. "Careful, darling. Accusations like that can destroy lives. Especially yours." Sophia's pulse pounded, but she didn't look away. "One day, I'll make sure everyone sees who you really are." Vanessa leaned closer, her perfume sharp and suffocating. "And one day, you'll learn that people believe what I tell them. Not you." That night, as Sophia lay awake in her room, the weight of her vow pressed harder on her chest. The conflict had officially begun. Vanessa knew she was suspicious, and Sophia knew Vanessa was dangerous. But she also knew one thing with certainty. This war had just started, and there was no turning back. Sophia Harrington had spent years enduring her stepmother's cruelty in silence. But now the silence was over. With her mother's letters in hand and allies whispering truths Vanessa wanted buried, Sophia knew she was standing on the edge of something dangerous. The war inside the Harrington mansion was no longer hidden. Vanessa knew Sophia was watching her, and Sophia knew Vanessa had blood on her hands. What neither of them knew was just how far the other was willing to go. Puzzle piece gathering pieces of the puzzle. Sophia began digging deeper into her mother's final days. The family doctor, Dr. Green, had always claimed Elizabeth died of a sudden heart condition. But when Sophia requested copies of her mother's old medical reports, she noticed inconsistencies. Elizabeth had no history of heart disease, no signs of illness until the weeks leading up to her death. Clara, the housekeeper, confirmed what Sophia suspected. Vanessa was often the one serving Elizabeth tea during those weeks. A particular blend Elizabeth loved, but Vanessa prepared it herself. Sophia pressed further. One evening, she found Clara in the kitchen polishing silverware. "Clara," Sophia said softly, "did my mother ever mention being afraid?" Clara hesitated. Her wrinkled hand stilled on the spoon she was polishing. "She told me once, just once, that she felt someone close to her wanted her gone. She didn't say who. But I could see it in her eyes." Sophia's chest tightened. The puzzle was becoming clearer, but she still lacked proof strong enough to break Vanessa. She needed evidence no one could deny. Fire Ethan's breaking point. Meanwhile, Ethan was unraveling. Vanessa's constant belittling, Brandon's mockery, and Richard's indifference had pushed him to the edge. One night, Sophia found him in the garage, throwing a baseball against the wall with furious force. "I can't take it anymore," he muttered, his voice shaking with rage. "She treats me like trash. Dad doesn't care. Brandon acts like he owns everything. Sometimes I just want to burn this whole house down." Sophia grabbed his arm, forcing him to look at her. "Don't let her win by breaking you. That's what she wants. She wants you to lose control so she can call you unstable." Ethan's eyes glistened with anger and hurt. "Then what do we do?" Sophia's voice dropped to a whisper. "We plan. We wait. And when the time is right, we strike." For the first time, Ethan saw the fire in his sister's eyes, the fire of someone no longer content with surviving. Mobile phone. Brandon's slip opportunity came sooner than Sophia expected. Brandon, always reckless, had been posting photos and videos from his wild parties on social media. One night, Sophia noticed something unusual in one of his live streams. Vanessa, in the background, speaking quietly to a man Sophia didn't recognize. The man handed her a folder, which Vanessa tucked away quickly before realizing the camera might have caught her. Sophia paused the video, zoomed in, and felt her stomach twist. She recognized the man. He was a financial consultant who had once been accused of fraud in Richard's company. Why would Vanessa be meeting him? And what was in that folder? It wasn't just about Elizabeth anymore. Vanessa was plotting something in the present, something that could ruin Richard, Ethan, and Sophia entirely. Lightbulb, a dangerous ally determined to find answers, Sophia reached out to Mark, her father's former business partner. Over coffee at a quiet diner, she showed him the screenshot of Vanessa with the consultant. Mark's face darkened. "I know him," Mark said. "Name's Alan Pierce. He nearly bankrupted one of Richard's developments years ago before Richard cut ties with him. If Vanessa's dealing with him, she's after money. Big money." Sophia leaned forward. "What kind of money?" "The kind that doesn't just disappear. The kind that could wipe out an inheritance, or funnel Richard's wealth into her control." Sophia's blood ran cold. Vanessa wasn't just after revenge against Elizabeth's memory. She was after everything: Richard's empire, the Harrington legacy, and all of it at the expense of Sophia and Ethan. Mark lowered his voice. "If you're going after her, you need to be careful. Vanessa doesn't play fair." Sophia met his gaze steadily. "Neither do I." Performing arts. The public mask cracks. The first sign of Vanessa's mask slipping came at a charity gala in downtown Boston. The Harringtons arrived in style, Richard in his tailored suit, Vanessa shimmering in a designer gown, Brandon at her side. Sophia and Ethan followed quietly, eyes sharp. Throughout the evening, Vanessa basked in attention, playing the role of perfect socialite. But Sophia had learned to look past the performance. She noticed the way Vanessa's hand tightened around her champagne glass whenever someone mentioned Elizabeth. She saw Brandon sneer when a guest congratulated Ethan on a recent school project. The cracks were forming. At one point, Sophia stepped onto the balcony for air, and found Vanessa already there, staring out over the city lights. "You've grown bold," Vanessa said without turning. "Looking at me like you know something." Sophia didn't flinch. "I do know something. And I'm going to prove it." Vanessa finally turned, her eyes cold and sharp. Be very careful, Sophia. The truth doesn't always set people free. Sometimes it buries them. Their eyes locked. An unspoken declaration of war. Woman detective. The turning point that night, Sophia made a decision. It was no longer enough to collect whispers and suspicions. She needed undeniable proof. So she began her plan. Step 1. Get access to Vanessa's private files. Sophia knew Vanessa kept her documents hidden in the locked cabinet in Richard's study. Brandon's livestream had shown the folder, so it had to be there. Step 2. Use Ethan's anger, not to destroy but to distract. If Ethan could draw attention away from Sophia at the right moment, she could slip into the study without notice. Step 3. When she found what she needed, she wouldn't confront Vanessa in private. No, she would expose her in front of Richard. In front of everyone. Because only then would the truth shatter Vanessa's carefully built facade. Sophia stared at her reflection in the mirror that night, her mother's necklace glinting faintly against her skin. This is for you, Mom, she whispered. And I won't stop until she pays. The Mitchell estate, once a sanctuary of order and elegance, now echoed with whispers and tension. The family dinners had turned into silent wars, every glance sharpened into daggers, every smile hiding a storm. Zoya could feel the cracks widening, and she knew the time was near when Samina and Daniyal's carefully crafted masks would finally crumble. It all began with the will. After months of carefully digging, Zoya discovered that her father's original will, written shortly after Nadia's death, had left the majority of his estate to Zoya and Ayan, with only a small provision for Samina. But somewhere in the shadows a new will had appeared, one that shifted everything to Daniyal. Zoya suspected foul play, and she knew exactly who was behind it. One night, in the dead silence of the study, she pulled open the locked drawer of her father's desk, something she had learned to pick after weeks of practice. Inside, she found folders of financial documents, correspondence with lawyers, and finally, tucked between contracts, a handwritten note. Her hands trembled as she read her father's words. Samina insists I change the will. I feel cornered. I don't trust this, but I'm too tired to fight anymore. God forgive me if this decision ruins my children's lives. Zoya's throat tightened. She pressed the note against her chest, tears burning her eyes. This was it. This was proof that her stepmother had manipulated their father. Maybe even forced him. The next morning, Zoya's demeanor changed. She was no longer just playing defense. She was preparing for war. Daniyal, meanwhile, grew bolder by the day. He flaunted his new position at the company, belittling Ayan at every turn. At a family gathering, he even mocked him in front of relatives. Some people just aren't cut out for success, Daniyal said smugly, his glass of champagne glinting in the light. College dropouts don't exactly scream Mitchell legacy, do they? Laughter rippled among a few shallow cousins. Ayan clenched his fists, but before he could retort, Zoya stepped forward. Funny thing about legacies, she said coolly, her eyes locking on Daniyal's. They don't last long when they're built on lies. The room fell silent. Daniyal's smirk faltered. Samina shot Zoya a sharp warning glare, but Zoya simply smiled and walked away, leaving a chill in the air. That was the moment everyone realized. Zoya was no longer silent. In the weeks that followed, Zoya began to turn Daniyal's world upside down. She exposed his careless mistakes at the company, forwarding anonymous tips to the board. She revealed his shady spending habits, letting whispers circulate among investors. His reputation, once golden, began to tarnish. Samina, sensing the shift, tightened her grip. She started staging little acts of manipulation. Fake tears in front of Arsalan's old friends, playing the victim, painting Zoya as the ungrateful daughter. But Zoya anticipated every move. One night, she staged a quiet meeting with Mr. Leonard, the family's long-trusted attorney. Sliding her father's note across the desk, she whispered, "This is what she did. My father didn't want that second will. I need your help to bring the truth to light." Mr. Leonard adjusted his glasses, reading the note with a frown. "If this is genuine, it changes everything." "It is genuine," Zoya said firmly. "And it's time the truth is heard." The real unraveling began at a charity gala. The kind of high-profile event where the Mitchells always made an appearance. Daniyal, dressed in his finest suit, strutted through the ballroom with Samina at his side, greeting politicians and business tycoons as if he were untouchable. But halfway through the evening, Zoya stepped onto the stage. Calm, composed, radiant in a black gown that commanded attention, she took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice smooth but steady, "I'd like to make an announcement. One that concerns the legacy of my late mother, Zoya Mitchell, and the truth about what has been hidden for far too long." The crowd stilled. Daniyal's drink froze halfway to his lips. Samina's face drained of color. Zoya's gaze swept the room. "For years, my brother and I have endured lies, manipulation, and cruelty inside our own home. My father's will was not changed by choice, but by coercion. And I have proof." Gasps echoed through the hall. She held up the note, projected onto the large screen behind her. Words in Arsalan's handwriting glared down at the crowd. "I feel cornered. I don't trust this. God forgive me if this decision ruins my children's lives." Daniyal's composure shattered. "This is nonsense," he shouted, his voice cracking. "She's making this up." But the murmurs had already begun. Investors whispered, relatives stared, and cameras clicked. Samina stepped forward, feigning outrage. "This is slander. You ungrateful girl." "Ungrateful." Zoya's voice rose, sharp as steel. "Ungrateful is what you called my mother before she mysteriously died. Ungrateful is how you treated her children while you and your son lived off her husband's wealth. But tonight, the world sees you for who you really are." The hall erupted in chaos. Daniyal stormed off, his face red with fury. Samina tried to follow, but the reporters swarmed, their flashes blinding, their questions relentless. And in the middle of the storm, Zoya stood tall, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and triumph. The masks had fallen. The world knew the truth. But deep inside, Zoya knew this was only the beginning. Revenge was not just about exposure, it was about justice. And justice, she promised herself, would be delivered in full. The Mitchell household had never felt so divided. The marble halls that once echoed with shallow laughter now carried only whispers and unease. After the charity gala disaster, Daniyal vanished for days, leaving his mother to deal with the fallout. Reporters camped outside the estate. Investors pulled out of deals. The Mitchell name, once a golden brand, was now synonymous with scandal. But Zoya wasn't finished. She wanted more than embarrassment. She wanted justice. She wanted Samina and Daniyal stripped of everything they had stolen. And most of all, she wanted the truth about her mother's death to come out in the open. The courtroom. The trial began on a rainy Monday morning. Cameras crowded the courthouse steps, their flashes creating a blinding storm as the family walked in. Zoya, calm and composed, entered with Ayan by her side. Daniyal arrived moments later, pale and jittery, flanked by expensive lawyers. Samina followed, her once flawless composure cracked, makeup heavy, eyes restless. Inside, Judge Harper presided with a firm hand. The case was a tangled mess of forged wills, financial fraud, and suspicious medical records from Zoya Mitchell's final days. Zoya sat silently, her gaze fixed on Samina, while the attorneys laid out the evidence. First came the note, her father's words about feeling cornered. Then came the testimony of Mr. Leonard, the old family attorney. "Mr. Mitchell confided in me," Leonard said solemnly. "He believed his wife pressured him into changing the will against his true wishes." Samina's lawyer tried to dismiss it as hearsay, but the jury leaned in closer. Then came the servants. One by one, the old staff spoke. The housemaid recalled the arguments between Nadia and Samina weeks before Nadia's sudden illness. The cook revealed how Samina insisted on preparing Nadia's tea personally during her last months. Finally, Dr. Reynolds, Nadia's former physician, stepped forward. "Her symptoms were consistent with poisoning," he stated. "At the time, I trusted the family's word that it was an autoimmune flare-up. But in hindsight, it was deliberate." The courtroom gasped. Samina's face turned to stone. Daniyal buried his head in his hands. The breakdown on the third day of trial, the prosecution unveiled financial records. Accounts secretly funneled into Daniyal's name, millions siphoned off from Mitchell Enterprises. Zoya finally stood. She walked to the witness stand, her voice steady. "For years, my brother and I lived under their cruelty," she said, gesturing toward Samina and Daniyal. We were silenced, humiliated, and left with nothing while they manipulated my father. But my mother deserves justice. And my father's legacy deserves truth. Her words cut through the silence like a blade. Jurors watched her not with pity, but with respect. Daniyal snapped. He slammed his fist on the table, shouting, "You think you can ruin me? Everything I did was for this family. Enough." Judge Harper's gavel struck hard. "One more outburst and you'll be removed from this courtroom." But the damage was done. The jury saw his arrogance, his instability. Samina, for the first time in years, looked small, powerless. The verdict: after 2 weeks, the jury returned. On the charge of will forgery, guilty. On the charge of fraud, guilty. On suspicion of foul play in Zoya Mitchell's death. Though circumstantial, the evidence was enough to reopen a criminal investigation. The gavel struck. Samina was sentenced to prison for fraud and forgery, awaiting trial for the greater crime. Daniyal faced financial ruin and was banned from corporate involvement. The Mitchell empire crumbled, but Zoya felt no sorrow. The final confrontation after the trial, Zoya visited Samina in the holding cell. The woman who once ruled the estate with elegance and cruelty now sat in a plain uniform, her hair disheveled. "You wanted to destroy me," Samina hissed, her eyes burning. "But remember this: power never stays in one place forever. One day you'll fall too." Zoya leaned in, her voice calm but laced with fire. "No, Samina. You destroyed yourself. I just showed the world who you really are." She turned and walked away, her heels echoing against the cold concrete floor. Epilogue: months later, Zoya stood on the balcony of the Mitchell estate, the sun setting over the city skyline. Ayan, taller now, stronger, stood beside her. "You did it," he said quietly. "We did it," she thought, though she kept her eyes on the horizon. The estate no longer felt haunted. It was no longer a place of shadows and cruelty, but of renewal. For the first time in years, Zoya breathed freely. Revenge had been served. Justice had been delivered. But in her heart, she knew it was more than that. It was survival. It was reclaiming the life her mother had been robbed of. And with the wind brushing against her face, Zoya whispered into the fading light, "For you, Mom. Always for you."